Ideogram 4 is a 9.3b parameter text-to-image model released by Ideogram. The company has always focused on design scenarios like posters, logos, and marketing assets, and Ideogram 4 is the first open-source base model they have trained from scratch. The whole point is to fix the everyday pain points in design work, like difficult layout, unreliable text rendering, and imprecise element placement. This model was trained on structured JSON data, so the prompt can define the content, style, color, and position of every element in the image in detail. That means we can precisely control what gets generated and where it is placed. As a result, the model is great at layout, typography, and color-controlled work like poster design, e-commerce hero shots, and logo creation. At the same time, the detail and realism are not bad either, so realistic styles like portraits, food, and scenery work just as well. It also supports flexible output resolutions and can generate 2K high-definition images directly. In today's video, we will take a deep dive into the various aspects of the Ideogram 4 model, covering the basic download method, acceleration options, low VRAM adaptations, and a detailed walkthrough of the workflow. We will compare the effect of different parameters, help you understand the structure of the prompt, and then walk step by step through how to add elements, change colors, and adjust positions by editing the prompt. We will also show how to use nodes from the Me Nodes and KJ Nodes plugins to generate, preview, and modify prompts. There is a lot to cover, so time to get started. The official Ideogram model comes in two formats, FP8 and NF4, but the NF4 format currently has poor compatibility in Comfy UI. While we are on the topic, since we are downloading the model to use inside Comfy UI, the easiest path is to grab it directly from the Comfy.org official repo. That way it works straight out of the box with no format compatibility issues. The repo contains 4 model files in total in FP8 and NVFP4 formats, with file sizes of 9.29 GB and 5.22 GB respectively. Note that the NVFP4 format is a quantized version KJ extracted from the FP8 model. It is not a true native 4-bit model, so the quality is a bit lower. Ideogram 4 uses a 2-branch classifier-free guidance architecture with 2 different models. The main model generates the image content from the prompt, and the unconditional model provides the negative guidance signal that helps boost prompt adherence and overall quality. You need to use both at the same time. For the main model, I recommend the FP8 format directly. The quality is stable. The unconditional model has a smaller impact on image quality. If you are on a 50 series NVIDIA card, you can grab the NVFP4 format to save VRAM. Alternatively, you can use the community-maintained unconditional LoRa together with the main model for the same effect. The text encoder is Q13VL8B instruct, which is a fairly large file, so I also recommend the FP8 format. The VAE is the Flux2 VAE, which most of you probably already have downloaded. There are several community GGUF quantization repositories where you can grab the model. That said, since Ideogram 4 is not a particularly large model to begin with, anyone who can run the FP8 version should avoid the quantized builds. The quality and stability are both better. Only when your VRAM is at or below 8 GB should you reach for the Q4 quantized version. One heads up though, as of June 21st, the Comfy UI GGUF plugin still needs to be on a fork to load the model properly. If you do not want the hassle, my advice is to wait a bit. The different formats of the main model and the unconditional model, including FP8, NVFP4, and GGUF, all go into the model's diffusion models directory. The text encoder goes into models text encoders, and the VAE into models VAE. Comfy UI has officially supported the Ideogram 4 model since version 0.24.0, so you will need to update Comfy UI to at least that version. Not many plugins are needed for this demo, mainly the following: Me Nodes and KJ Nodes for prompt generation and preview, RG3 for quick group management, Crystools for condition switching. The Me Nodes and KJ Nodes pieces rely on recently added features, so make sure to update them. If you usually speed things up with Sage Attention, like I do, you will hit this error when using Ideogram 4. The original Sage Attention only supports head dimensions up to 128, which is below the 256 head dimension Ideogram 4 uses. In that case, the system falls back to PyTorch Attention, and you lose the speed up. The fix is to install this fork maintained by Walkthrough though. On the releases page, find the wheel file that matches your Torch version. My V8 distribution ships with 2.10 plus CU130. This file is tagged CP31A by3, so it supports Python 3.10 and above, and it works in the V8 distribution's Python 3.13. Once downloaded, open a PowerShell terminal in the ComfyUI root directory and use the Python from the Python embedded folder to pip install the wheel. Restart ComfyUI and the error will be gone. I am recording this on a 4080, and ComfyUI is on the latest build. If we peek at the About page, the core version is 0.25.0, which is well past the minimum. Open the Workflow Template library, and in the Image category you can see two Ideogram 4 workflows. The one on the right uses the paid API, so since we are running locally, load the workflow on the left. ComfyUI has been on a subgraph workflow kick recently, probably to keep new users from being scared off by too many options. The whole workflow is split into two independent parts. The three nodes on the left, including the subgraph, are the image generation flow. On the right is a system prompt you can paste into a large language model to generate prompts. Inside the subgraph node, switch all the models to local. I am using the FP8 versions across the board with the mode set to default and then click Run. Loading the model, sampling, and decoding, the whole pipeline took just over a minute, and we ended up with this final image. It has a character, text, and elements like footprints, a skateboard, and a font balloon. The layout is layered cleanly, the text is sharp, and the visual impact is strong. A punchy street culture poster. To understand the details of the workflow, time to crack open the subgraph and look at the nodes inside. The sampling portion is actually only the top layer of nodes. The rest is all preset definitions, wired up in a fancy way to pull the matching parameters from a JSON. I tidied things up a bit and arrived at this workflow. The whole flow can be split into the following parts: model loading, size definition, prompt, optional prompt enhancement, optional JSON prompt preview, sampling and scheduling, quality tier selection, and the final image save. The models are still the FP8 versions. The default size is a 1024 by 24 square, and the default tier is quality priority. I will walk through the parameters in detail later. For now, I will just swap in a different prompt and run it. The request is to generate a hand-knitted cream lamb sitting in the foreground of a green meadow with a vast field and a blue sky with white clouds in the background. Although Ideogram 4 recommends JSON format prompts, I am sticking with a traditional text block for this run, and in many cases the model can still understand it. Here is the result. A cream knitted lamb sits in the center left of the frame, with the wool's knit texture clearly visible. The grass and wildflowers in the background render naturally, and the shallow depth of field adds a nice sense of space. The plain text prompt held up well, but to play to the model's strengths we should switch to a JSON prompt and run it again. This JSON prompt describes the overall image, defines the aesthetic style, provides a pink-toned palette, and precisely specifies the knitted butterfly in the upper left, the pale pink knitted lamb in the center left, the daisy cluster in the lower right, and the Chinese title in the upper right. We will dig into the prompt format in detail later in the video. The result came out, and the image matches the prompt exactly. The pale pink knitted lamb sits in the center left with crisp, detailed wool texture. A purple-pink knitted butterfly flutters in the upper left with delicate stitching detail on its wings. A Chinese title sits in the upper right with restrained, elegant typography. Let's use the result from this prompt run as the baseline for explaining the workflow parameters. First, the three model quality tiers: quality, default, and turbo, each with different sampling step counts, mu and std values. The step count is easy to grasp. Mu and std are the two parameters in the noise schedule representing the mean and the standard deviation. There is a table in the workflow where you can try different parameter combinations. I personally lean toward quality. Now switching to default and turbo so we can see the effect. The sampling times in the background are 39 seconds and 26 seconds respectively versus 1 minute 32 seconds for the quality run earlier. All three output images are decent, but the higher the step count, the better the result. For example, the curl texture of the wool, the silk feel of the butterfly wings, and the edges of the text strokes are all sharper and cleaner in quality mode. Switching back to the quality tier and look at the other parameters. For sampling, I like res multistep, though Euler from the official workflow works too. With the same parameters and prompt, the output looks like this, and there is almost no difference. The CFG setting during sampling is also interesting. It is not fixed at a single value. Instead, it uses a dynamic strategy. A higher value is used in the early part of sampling to make sure the model sticks closely to the prompt. Then the value is lowered in the final phase for a polishing pass. There are 3 parameters we can tune: the high CFG value, the low CFG value, and the switch point. 2 nodes in the workflow control these. The current default is to use CFG 7 for the first 70% of the sampling steps, then CFG 3 for the rest. There is also a popular community setting of 3 for the high value and 1 for the low, which gives a faster sampling speed. Running it for you? The effect is a matter of taste. Personally, I prefer the high CFG result. There is also a setting that is closer to the official Ideogram recommendation. Use 7 for the first 90% and 3 for the last 10%. For this prompt and these parameters, the result is almost indistinguishable from the original flow. Back in the model intro, we mentioned that the community has an unconditional LoRa. Pair it with the main model and you can run the workflow. Let me show that now. Add a new LoRa loader node, pick this model and keep the strength at 1. Plug it into the main model on the left and on the right swap it in for the previous unconditional model. A small workflow tip: hold Shift and left click to grab the existing wire from a node's output and drop it onto the new node's output. It saves a lot of fiddling. Click Run. Oops, my image may have been a little on the complex side. There is nothing else wrong, but the Chinese went completely off. The 2 lines turned into 4 with a lot of wrong characters. That said, non-Chinese content is still fine. The same prompt with only an English title looks all right. Still, if you need to use Ideogram 4 in a complex scene, just download the full unconditional model. Restore the workflow to use the full unconditional model. KJ Nodes has an optimization node for Ideogram 4 that reduces the VRAM peak. It is easy to use. Double-click on an empty spot in the workflow, search for the Ideogram 4 optimizations node, and the default values are fine. Plug this node in right after model loading and click Run. Compared to the original, the image quality difference is almost invisible. If you still hit OMM with the default parameters, you can adjust the FFNCHUX value. A larger value reduces VRAM usage more. Ideogram 4 supports flexible resolution. Both width and height can be set between 256 and 2048 pixels, as long as the value is a multiple of 16. Common aspect ratios are well supported, like 1:1, 9:16, 16:9, 3:4, 4:3, 2:3, and so on. It can also generate 2K images directly. That said, after a lot of hands-on use, I have found that for complex scenes, especially anything with Chinese text, the 1:1 square is still the most stable choice. Now we have covered the parameters. Time for the most complex part of the Ideogram 4 workflow, the JSON prompt. The prompt structure template Comfy UI provides looks like this, and it can be split into 3 parts. The high-level description outlines what kind of image to generate as a whole. The style description defines the aesthetic, lighting, photography type, medium, and color palette. The compositional deconstruction contains the background description and a list of specific elements. Each element can be an object or text, with its position defined by coordinates and its own color palette. Our current prompt fills in each group on top of this template. Reading raw code like that is still a bit abstract. Time to enable the prompt builder group and look at the layout defined by the prompt here. Click Run on the preview image node and you can see that our layout places different elements in the upper left, upper right, and lower right. Clicking on each region shows the specific content. This layout view has a 1:1 correspondence with the final output image. Time to build the prompt up from simple to complex, step by step. Start with a simple prompt and click Run. There are 2 object elements, the knitted lamb and the daisy cluster, at coordinates 420, 80, 780, 460, and 820, 720, 980, 980. In Ideogram 4 prompts, these 4 values represent the minimum y, the minimum x, the maximum y, and the maximum x, with the top left corner of the image as the origin. So the top left is 0, 0, and the bottom right is 1000, 1000. The layout preview makes it clear that there are only two elements in the lower left area and the lower right. The final image matches that. The positions of the knitted lamb and the daisy are both correct. Adding a new element brings a knitted butterfly into the scene. There are 3 steps. First, add a new object element describing a knitted butterfly fluttering in the air and define its position and color. It sits in the upper left sky area with soft lavender and blush pink wings and a cream body. Second, update the high-level description to add the butterfly. The original description only said the lamb sits in the meadow. The updated version has the lamb sitting in the meadow with a knitted butterfly floating in the upper left sky. These 2 steps are required. There is also an optional step of appending the butterfly colors to the global palette in the style description. Manually, you can skip this, and it usually does not affect the result much. But if you are using a large language model to write the prompt, you might as well do it properly. Click Generate, and the final image is excellent. The new butterfly's color and position match the prompt exactly and blend naturally with the rest of the scene. On top of that, change the lamb's color from cream to pale pink. There are a few steps, but the key ones are the lamb element and parts of the high-level description. Update the lamb's element description to swap the wool material from cream or white yarn to blush pink and rose petal yarn. Swap the lamb's element palette over to pinks as well. All 5 color values need to be updated. Update the high-level description too. The rest of the updates to the style description and the global palette are optional. Click Generate and you can easily get the pink lamb you wanted. Note that this is not an image editing model, so in essence it is resampling from scratch, so there is no guarantee that everything besides the lamb's color will stay the same. Building on the pink lamb, time to try changing it to a soft lavender. Update the lamb's element description to swap the wool material from blush pink and rose petal yarn to lilac and violet yarn. Swap the lamb's element palette over to purples. All 5 color values need to be updated. Update the high-level description too, swapping pale pink lamb for soft lavender lamb. The rest of the updates to the style description and the global palette are optional. Click Generate and the lamb turns lavender, with the butterfly and background unchanged. It is close to the original, but if we compare them with a Pro tool, you can see a lot of differences, like the pose of the lamb's hind legs and the clouds behind the butterfly. I have also run multiple versions in different colors. Prompt adherence is solid. You can swap colors as much as you like. Back to the pink lamb, time to add some Chinese and English title text. Add 4 text type elements, the English main title in the upper right, the English subtitle, the Chinese main title in the upper left, and the Chinese subtitle. Each one needs a position, the text content, and a style description. The English main title, Willed Meadow, goes in the upper right. The English subtitle, A Knitted Tale, goes below the main title. The Chinese main title, a 4-character phrase that roughly means Stories of the Wild Meadow, goes in the upper left. The Chinese subtitle, a 4-character phrase meaning A Knitted Fairy Tale, goes below the main title. At the same time, update the high-level description to add the title. Click Generate. And the English title looks great, but the Chinese ran into a wrong character issue. The second character should have been the knit character, but it was completely miswritten. I ran the same prompt with different seeds 4 times, and the character was wrong twice, so this seems to be a model weakness. To deal with wrong Chinese characters, we can append a character decomposition note to the element's desk field to help the model understand the glyph structure better. Update the description for that Chinese subtitle, appending a breakdown of the second character at the end. Run it again, and this time the character is correct. This is not a one-off. I ran it with 4 different seeds and every one of them was fine. This character decomposition trick clearly helps fix wrong characters, but it generally only works when there are 1 or 2 wrong characters on an image. In my experience, Ideogram 4's Chinese support is far behind Quen image, so it is best not to write too many Chinese characters. Now every element on the image looks great, but the butterfly and the Chinese title are both in the upper left, which is a bit crowded. Time to adjust the layout. Instead of rewriting the prompt, a simple option is to move the element in this node from KJ nobes. The first step, though, is to change the node's import mode from always to when empty, otherwise it will keep grabbing content from the upstream prompt node and overwrite any edits you make. Then enlarge the editor, click element 01, and the content below shows the knitted butterfly. Drag it closer to the middle. Click Run, and you can see the preview layout has changed. The final image reflects that too, with the butterfly now floating in the middle. You have seen the prompts I prepared, so the question is how to actually generate them. Aside from the hardcore option of writing the JSON by hand, there are two main approaches. The first is to use the editor node we just used to move the butterfly. You box select the element position, fill in the content, and pick the colors, sort of like a drawing tool. I will not go deep into that here. The other is to give a large language model a system prompt and a target, have it generate everything, and then tweak the result in the editor node or just feed it straight into image generation. Showing the second approach now. Ideogram ships a detailed prompt document, and based on that plus extracted example prompts, I put together 3 tiers of system prompts, simple, complex, and movable, and they are all in the MeNodes plugin directory for you to look at. How to use it? Just throw the system prompt at a large language model, then attach the aspect ratio and the content you want to generate. For a free option, you can paste it into the DeepSeek or QN web interface. The easiest option is to use an API platform. I happen to have a token plan, partly for vibe coding and partly for raising my virtual shrimp. In the workflow, enable the prompt enhancement group, pick your platform and model on the left. I went with the M3 model on the Minimax token plan, with the API key written into the plugin directory's config file. First-timers can refer to the example file. The middle node handles the actual prompt generation. Just type what you want in the text box. The only thing to watch out for is the 3 generation modes I mentioned earlier. Simple is mainly for single subject scenes like normal illustrations, characters, and landscapes. Complex generates multiple element objects with bounding boxes, which is good for posters, covers, and multi-text layouts. Movable builds on complex but avoids pinning down specific positions in the description, so it can be paired with the KJNodes editor. As a side note, fixing the seed in the LLM request does not guarantee the same result, but it can avoid repeated runs inside the workflow. If you are not using a 1-to-1 resolution, let the model know the aspect ratio as well. It will give better results. Click Run. M3 takes a while to think things through, so it is slow. You can swap to a non-thinking model to speed things up. The prompt comes out. Time to preview it in the editor node. Oops, no change. That is because earlier we set the load mode to when empty so we could edit inside the node. We need to flip it back to always. Cancel the previous task and run it again, and you can clearly see 3 elements. The output matches the prompt's layout. The character is in the center left, the sun is in the middle, and the English title is in the upper right. The text repeated across 2 lines though, so I switched seeds and tried again, and it was fine. Side note, in the latest prompt enhancement node, the one I updated after recording, I tuned the system prompt to significantly reduce the chance of this kind of text repetition. If you are not happy with the position, or you want to add an element, you can follow the approach I showed earlier and tweak things in the editor node by hand. Just remember to switch the load mode back to when empty. Ideogram has another special use case. Thanks to its prompt adherence, it can generate content on a transparent background. Worth a try. First, disable the prompt enhancement inside the prompt and swap in a prompt like this. Set the background to transparent and define the style as product cutout. The output looks like this. It seems like a transparent background, but the image is actually full of gray and white checkers. That format is not a real alpha channel, just a checker pattern that imitates transparency. You will still need to manually cut it out in post. For a real cutout, the key is to generate a fixed color background like a green screen. Swap to a prompt like this. Set the background to a pure blue screen and define the style as an isolated subject. Emphasize no cast shadow, no gradients, and 0 floor line. Run it again. And this time we get a pure blue background with the lamb's edges crisp and no shadows or gradients. Using the same flow, you can generate subjects on any solid color background, and any matting tool will remove the background in 1 click. Very handy. That wraps up the demo. Time to summarize. I personally really like this model, mainly because of its JSON structured prompts and extremely strong prompt adherence. That structured data, combined with the do exactly what I say feedback, makes it a great fit for an agent. For example, in the skill covered in this video, I taught OpenClaw to run the Ideogram 4 workflow, and with a single sentence, it reproduced a bunch of classic movie posters and well-known logos using the lamb element. One look and you immediately know which image it is riffing on. The downsides, though, are pretty obvious. First, it leans more toward design work, so portraits are relatively weaker. Second, Chinese support is just so-so. Third, generation speed is not great, and it cannot compare with Z-Image Turbo, which cranks out an image in seconds. Fourth, the license is non-commercial, and it has a built-in content filter, though it is not too strict. At least in my own testing, a bikini girl renders fine. That is it for this video. If you found this helpful, please drop a like. All of the models, plugins, and resource links mentioned in the video are in the description, so grab whatever you need. See you in the next one.